So next I want to cover what happens when you click on one of these jobs and you are taken to the job details page. So back to the home component, the results are displayed by this component, the show results component. So here's the JSX for show results, and there's basically two sections. You have the results here, and below that is the navigation, the show next. These buttons down here are the show next page and the results. So you can click on this and go to the next and then the next. So to render out each of these sections, I call map on the company index array, which is just an array of random numbers. So it displays the company name from filter data. I use the constant for company to get to that array index, and then the random number for the particular company to list. Now again, this is just for a proof of concept. I just need a random company name there. So the click handler is on the section, and it calls handle click job and passes the index passed by map. So handle click job function is passed the index, which gives me the random number to the company, and I use that to get the name of the company and the tech stack for the company. And then I call history push, which is part of the router, and it pushes me to the page that displays the full job description. So the router gets called again. It's a switch, and if we look down, you can see there's path job, and it's going to render in the body this component called show job. Here's the JSX for show job, and you can see that it has the apply button at the top, it has the close icon, and I display the company name, and I also display the tech stack. And that's followed by all the labels for the various things like education required, experience level. Now these are just random. These are constants from my constant definition. So for education required, I call this function called getSingleValue, and I pass it the constant for education required. Here's the function for getSingleValue, and I pass in the index, which is used for filter data. And I use a random generator to pick a single value from that array and return that. So getSingleValue gets a single value from the filter data array, and you just pass in the type, education required, experience level, employee type, and so on. And this is the results. Now benefits displays multiple values. So for benefits, I call get multiple values, and I pass it the constant show filter benefits, which tells me where in the filter data array to get the information, and I tell it how many I want to be displayed. So let's step through get multiple values, where I pass in two values, both numbers, the index into filter data, and then how many to display. So this count is used in my for loop, and I create an empty array of strings, and using the random generator, I select which values from this filter data that I want to pick and add those to my values. And then I just use a join to join these strings into a single string and then return that to be displayed. And that's what we see here. I have this really repetitive static code. You can see I've hard-coded all these labels. Now I could make this dynamic such that all of this code from here, let me scroll down just to give you an indication of how much code this is. All of this code would compress into a single section, and I'd have some kind of array that I'd iterate through and use map to generate all of these. I'm not going to make this change at this time, but there is another refactor I want to make. You can see that these call getSingleValue, and then this one calls getMultipleValues. So here are the two functions. And this getSingleValue is really just a special case of getMultipleValue. It's getMultipleValues, and you pass in a 1. So let me make that change. I've made the change and I've commented out this function instead of deleting it, and you can see down below I use get multiple values and I pass in a 1 for all these. You can see here that it works. Here's the change in Gitkraken, has nice diff, seeing the before and after. But I'm not happy with this change because 11 times out of 12 we could have just called get single value, and it does less work because it doesn't have a for loop in it. So I've restored the code the way it was, and what I think will be better is calling get single value inside the for loop for get multiple values. I'm going to make that change now. Because this code in the middle here is identical to the code above, we can just delete it and call get single value and pass it the index number. And we'll move this over to here and done. And that worked. And here's the change in Gitkraken diff. So this made my code a little drier, DRY. Do not repeat yourself. If your goal is simply to minimize how many lines of code you have, you might overcomplicate the code and make it difficult to understand and therefore difficult to maintain. So before you do a refactor, you have to think about what are the pros and cons. I know from experience I have over refactored and the code I have becomes inflexible to future changes. One advantage of the way I've coded it down below is that there's a lot of flexibility here. For example, I've added dot replace here. If these were all generated the same way in some kind of map loop, then it wouldn't be so easy to have a special case. But I'm definitely going to stick with this optimization, this refactor, because it does make my code more dry. I definitely had duplicate code in there. So those are all the features I wanted to cover. Check the link in the description for my GitHub. You can download and take a look at the rest of this code if you're interested and even run it locally.